My name is Julia Hart. I'm 27 years old. And this is the story of how being the nice one in my family nearly broke me, until I finally broke the silence. It started with a text that looked harmless. Just a smiling message in the family group chat. Summer trip. We're all going together just like every year, smiley face. My stomach clenched. I hadn't even responded when my mom chimed in with her usual cheer. This year's going to be even better. I booked 2 rooms, one for the kids, one for us. There it was. The same assumption. The same trap dressed up in sunny emojis and cheerful punctuation. The kids, of course, were my sister Melissa's 6-year-old triplets. And when she said 1 room for the kids, what she really meant was 1 room for Julia to babysit them in. Again. I remember just staring at my phone, the screen lighting up with everyone else's reactions, laughing emojis, yay. From Dad, Melissa's classic, can't wait. As if this were a party we all equally looked forward to. But I wasn't smiling. I wasn't laughing. Because I knew exactly what was going to happen. It was going to be like last year. Last year I was so excited. I had requested PTO weeks in advance. Booked my own bus ticket to the Oregon coast. Packed my sketchpad, headphones, even a list of art galleries I wanted to visit. I dreamed of long walks on the beach, late-night coffee, time to just breathe. Instead, I got handed a hotel key with 3 screaming boys attached to it. Melissa and her husband, Josh, had a suite with an ocean view. My room was next door to the ice machine, shared with 3 restless, sugar-high toddlers and no lock on the bathroom door. I didn't even unpack my sketchpad. I spent the nights wiping sticky fingers and the mornings begging for 10 minutes of quiet. And every time I tried to ask for a break, I got the same guilt-soaked lines, "But you're so good with them, Julia," or, "Come on, sweetie, you're not paying for this trip. It's only fair you help out." Fair. That word haunted me. Because I had paid for that trip. In PTO. In mental exhaustion. In feeling like I didn't even belong to my own life. But none of that counted. This year I decided, enough. I opened a new browser tab and booked a hotel room just down the road from theirs. A single room, adult-only floor with blackout curtains and ocean view breakfast service. When I pressed confirm, my hands were shaking. I didn't realize until then how deeply afraid I was of disappointing my family. Of breaking the role I'd been assigned since childhood. The peacekeeper, the helper, the girl who never says no. But this time I did say no. And just like I feared, it didn't go over quietly. My mom called within 3 minutes. "Julia, what do you mean you booked your own room?" "I just want some space this time, Mom. I want to rest." She paused, her tone immediately shifting. "But that means Melissa will be on her own with the boys. Josh will be working remotely. And your father and I aren't exactly young anymore." "I know. But I'm not their nanny." The silence that followed wasn't surprised. It was disapproving. Heavy with the weight of generations. "You've changed," she finally said like it was a bad thing. That night, Melissa sent me a long, passive-aggressive message. "I guess it's just too much to ask for a little help. You're single. No kids. I just wanted a real family vacation." I didn't reply. Because if I had, I might have said something I couldn't take back. Instead, I spent that week reminding myself, I had a right to say no. I had a right to want rest. My worth wasn't defined by how much labor I gave away for free. But I knew the guilt wasn't over. 3 days before the trip, my dad called. "Are you really going to stay in a different hotel?" "Yes. You know your mom's hurt. And your sister." "I've been hurt too, Dad. You just didn't see it." There was a long pause. And then for the first time he didn't argue. "I get it." That night I cried. Not because I was ashamed. But because it felt like I was finally standing up for myself, and I didn't know what that would cost. The morning of the trip I left early. No one called. No one texted. And I didn't feel free. Not yet. But I felt honest. I checked into my room, unpacked my things and sat by the window listening to the waves. For the first time in years, I wasn't in a rush to meet someone else's needs. Until the phone rang. I didn't need to look. I knew it was her. "Where are you?" Melissa's voice was cold. "I just got to my hotel." "Private room?" she repeated like it was a slur. "Seriously, Julia? You're turning our family vacation into your solo act." "I'm joining group dinners," I said evenly. "I'm just resting when I need to." "Oh, how convenient." "You're free. Relaxed." "I'm exhausted and juggling 3 kids. And you can't even give me one afternoon off." My throat tightened, but I didn't flinch. "Melissa, I'm not your backup plan for burnout. I love your kids, but I didn't sign up to raise them." There was a beat. Then her voice cracked. not with guilt but with rage. "You've destroyed everything." Then she hung up. I stood there, the phone still in my hand, my heart pounding. I wasn't sure what felt worse, the silence that followed or the certainty that I'd finally chosen myself, and that meant I might lose them. But what I didn't expect was that this was only the beginning, not of the fallout, but of something much deeper. Because the truth? The part that Melissa didn't know? This story wasn't going to end with silence. It was going to end with a reckoning. I didn't sleep much that first night. The bed was perfect, the waves outside were calm, but my mind wouldn't stop pacing the same loop. Did I do the right thing? Was I really being selfish? Would things ever go back to normal? But then I remembered, normal was me babysitting 3 kids while everyone else sipped cocktails on a balcony. Normal was me biting my tongue while my mother praised Melissa's parenting and ignored my existence. Normal was not rest. It was resignation. So I did something I'd never done before. I posted about it. Not to my social media. Not to anyone who knew me. I created an anonymous Reddit account and posted in a family confessions thread. The title was blunt. "My sister thinks I betrayed her because I refused to babysit her kids on vacation." I didn't name names. I didn't include photos or details that could trace back to us. But I told the story, honestly. I wrote about the Oregon coast, the shared room, the missing teddy bear, the midnight snack runs, the way I asked for just 1 hour to see the art gallery I dreamed about for years, and how that turned into another 3 hours of unpaid childcare. I wrote how everyone praised me when I was silent, but the moment I asked for space I became the villain. And then I ended it with a question. Am I wrong for wanting a vacation that's actually mine? I closed the app and went to sleep, not expecting anything. But when I woke up the next morning, the post had gone viral. Thousands of upvotes. Hundreds of comments. Strangers validating me in ways my own family never had. Some said I was a saint for enduring it as long as I did. Others called out the weaponization of being single, how people think your time doesn't matter because you don't have a spouse or kids. Reading their responses, I felt 2 things at once: vindicated and heartbroken. Vindicated because I wasn't alone. Heartbroken because I realized how many people were. And then, my phone rang. It was Melissa. "Did you write that Reddit post?" Her voice wasn't angry, not yet, just flat, brittle. "Did you read it?" I asked calmly. "Don't play dumb. You described everything. The hotel. The boys. The beach. Of course I knew it was me. I didn't name you. You didn't have to. Now thousands of strangers are calling me selfish. My inbox is flooded. People are DMing Josh." I took a breath. "Melissa, they're responding to the truth." There was a pause. Then came the shift, not into sadness but something worse, humiliation. "You made me a joke. You made me look like some entitled monster." "I didn't make you anything," I said, my voice steady. "I just finally said what I couldn't say out loud to you." The line went dead. I didn't know if she'd hung up or was too stunned to reply. I didn't call back. An hour later, Mom texted. "Did you really post that online?" I answered truthfully. "Yes." Because if I didn't say it somewhere, no one would have listened. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. That evening, I got a message from Josh, Melissa's husband. We'd never talked much outside of family dinners. He was polite, quiet, more of a background character in every scene. But this message felt different. "I'm sorry for how you've been treated. I think I let things go on too long. I'm talking to Melissa." That one message hit harder than I expected. Not because it changed anything, but because it was the first time someone inside the family acknowledged that I wasn't crazy. That what I felt, the exhaustion, the bitterness, the quiet grief of being overlooked, wasn't just in my head. Then 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a simple sentence from Mom. "The vacation is canceled." I stared at it numb. Then relief washed over me like cold water. But underneath that relief was a twinge of something else. Sadness. Grief. Not because I missed the trip, but because I knew how far things had cracked for that to even happen. Later that day, Josh messaged again. "I'd like to talk. In person. Just you and me. No Melissa. No parents." I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe a few blocks from my hotel. Josh looked tired, not in the way you look after chasing kids all day, but the way you look when something you've ignored for years finally crashes down. "I've read everything," he said as soon as we sat down. "The post. The comments. I even went back and checked the bank statements." I blinked. "What bank statements?" Josh sighed. "Melissa told me she gave you money. For babysitting. For snacks. For everything. Said she left envelopes for you on the counter." I gave a humorless laugh. If there was an envelope, I never saw it. I asked her directly. She admitted she lied. She gave you maybe $20 for pizza once or twice. The rest? She pocketed. Told me she'd reimbursed you in full. My stomach turned, but I didn't flinch. I'm not surprised anymore. Josh looked ashamed. I let her walk over you because it was easier than confronting her. That's on me. I nodded. So what now? I asked her to calculate everything she owed you. Down to the last cent. She's going to pay it back. And I told her she needs help. Real help. Therapy. I didn't say anything. My hands were folded in my lap, clenched tight. I can't undo everything, Josh said softly. But I can try to make sure it doesn't happen again. That evening, I returned to my hotel room and found Melissa waiting outside. She had an envelope in her hands. Her eyes were red. Josh stood behind her, arms folded. I'm sorry, she said, her voice almost a whisper. For using you. For lying. For turning our vacations into a job you never signed up for. She handed me the envelope. This is what I owe you. Every penny. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Instead, I looked at her and asked, do you think things can ever go back to how they were? Melissa shook her head. No. And maybe that's a good thing. And for the first time in years, I believed her. But what came next? I never expected. Because this story was never really about vacations or babysitting or Reddit. It was about the moment a quiet girl decided to speak. And when she did, everything changed. The next morning, my phone buzzed before sunrise. It was a message from Melissa, not demanding, not defensive. Just a single sentence. I made an appointment with a therapist. My first session is Friday. I read it twice, unsure if it was real. Then I read it a third time and let the moment settle over me like the tide rolling in. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. I just needed space. Not everything had to be responded to immediately. Especially not now when everything still felt fragile. But something in me softened. I poured coffee, stepped out onto the hotel balcony, and let the early light stretch across my face. Felt like a new chapter. One where I was no longer an extra in someone else's story. One where I didn't exist solely in the margins of other people's needs. Later that week, I got another message. This one from my dad. Your mom and I would like to take you out to dinner this weekend. Your favorite place. No agenda. Just us. I almost didn't go. But something told me I should. So on Saturday evening, I walked into the Pines, the quiet little restaurant we used to visit when I was in college. The place hadn't changed. Same forest green booths, soft lighting, scent of rosemary and old wood. But something else had changed. When I stepped in, my mom stood up first. And then, for the first time in my life, she pulled out a chair for me. That small gesture cracked something open in me. A tear formed before the appetizers even arrived. We're sorry, Mom said softly. For minimizing you. For giving you burdens that weren't yours to carry. I looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't see the woman who had always made excuses for Melissa. I saw someone trying. Fumbling. But trying. We're planning another trip, Dad added. You don't have to come. But if you do, we'll make sure you can travel separately. Stay separately. No pressure. No babysitting. We promise. I hesitated. Still cautious. Still holding the weight of so many broken promises in the back of my throat. What about Melissa? I asked. She's in counseling, Mom said. Josh convinced her. And she's starting to realize she needs to change. I didn't reply right away. I just stared down at the tablecloth and breathed slowly. All right, I said finally. But I'm driving myself. Booking my own room. And if anyone tries to put me back in the babysitter role, I'll leave. No discussion. No guilt. I'll just walk. Both my parents nodded. We understand, Dad said. And for the first time, I believed that maybe, just maybe, they actually did. A week later, the family group chat lit up again. This time, the name had changed. Beach Trip, Reset Version. No assumptions. No orders. No guilt tripping. Even Melissa only sent a few smiley emojis. No requests. No demands. I booked a boutique hotel half a mile from the house they were renting. Close enough to join if I wanted. Far enough to breathe. On the morning of the trip, I left the city before dawn. No one asked where I was. No one reminded me of check-in times or sent passive-aggressive just checking texts. For the first time in years, I felt like an actual adult in my own family. I arrived, checked in, and requested privacy at the front desk. No one is to be told which room I'm in, I said. Unless it's law enforcement. Emergency only. The receptionist smiled like she'd heard that before. We got you. That first night, we all met at a seafood restaurant by the beach. Everyone was there, Mom, Dad, Melissa, Josh, the boys. But something was different. Melissa didn't look like she was waiting to pounce. And she wasn't alone with the kids either. She'd brought someone new. Ava, she said, introducing the young woman with a kind smile and a clipboard. She's helping with the boys this week. Hired nanny. Professional. I looked at Josh, who gave me the smallest, subtlest nod of gratitude. Thank you for coming, Melissa said. No follow-up. No, can you just, or, do you mind if? Just a simple thank you. I nodded. Nothing more. During dinner, no one asked me to cut anyone's food. No one handed me wipes or snack bags or whispered that the boys needed to use the restroom. I sat next to Dad and told him about a new interior design project I was doing for a boutique hotel. For the first time ever, he listened, really listened, like what I said mattered as much as anything Melissa had ever done. When dinner ended, I stood up quietly. I'm heading back to my hotel, I said. No one tried to follow. No one asked why. And when I opened the door to my quiet, dimly lit room and curled into the bed, I realized something. This was the first time I'd ever visited my family on my terms. And it felt incredible. The next day, I slept in, made coffee, and spent the morning journaling on the balcony. Then I visited a local art gallery I'd missed the year before. No one interrupted. No one pulled me away. But just as I was leaving, my phone buzzed. It was Ava. Hi, Julia, her message read. I'm sorry to bother you, but Melissa asked if you could watch the boys for about 15 minutes. She said it's urgent. A chill ran down my spine. I took a breath. Not in anger, in clarity. I called Ava directly. Hi, I said warmly. You're doing a great job. But just so you know, I'm not the babysitter. Melissa should have planned ahead. Ava sighed. I understand. I'm just the messenger. And you're doing your job well. Thanks for calling. I hung up and immediately texted Josh. Melissa tried to pass the boys to me through Ava. His reply came in seconds. I'll take care of it. Thank you for telling me. That afternoon, when I showed up late to the seaside park, the air felt different. Josh was kicking a soccer ball with the boys. Melissa sat quietly under a tree looking off toward the waves. My mom handed me a lemonade and whispered, I'm sorry about earlier. Melissa should have known better. I just nodded. I wasn't here to fight. I was here to live. Later, as the family lounged under the trees, Melissa finally looked up at me and said something I didn't expect. Thank you for not making a scene earlier. I looked at her, calm and steady. I don't need to yell to be heard, I said. I've already said everything that needed to be said. Josh gave a quiet nod. And from that moment on, no one brought up, just a few minutes of help, again. The following days passed peacefully. I explored on my own, joined when I wanted to, left when I didn't. I was part of the group, but never swallowed by it. For the first time, I wasn't avoiding them. I was simply living beside them. On equal footing. And that felt like victory. Day 4 of the trip was the first time I truly let myself exhale. The sun had just begun its lazy descent when I walked into a quiet seaside cafe with a worn wood sign and a salt breeze that felt like it carried memories. I sat by the window, ordered a lavender iced tea, and opened the sketchbook I'd carried with me all week but hadn't touched. For the first time in years, the pencil moved without guilt trailing behind it. No cries of Aunt Julia, I'm hungry, no calls from Melissa, no hushed comments about how I should help out more since I don't have kids. Just me, a page, and peace. I didn't know how long I'd been sketching when my phone buzzed again. A message from Josh. Thank you for holding your boundaries. I know today was hard. Confused, I scrolled back to earlier that day wondering what he meant. Then I remembered Ava. The phone call. The near repeat of last year, stopped in its tracks. What used to be a tidal wave had become a ripple. And it was because I had stopped being afraid of the storm. I replied, thanks for having my back. His response was simple. This time you're not alone. I can't explain how powerful that felt. Not dramatic, not explosive, just steady. Like a beam in a house that had always leaned too far one way finally finding balance. The next morning, I woke up early and went on a solo sunrise hike. The trail cut through low coastal pines and opened onto a cliff overlooking the water. For a moment, I stood alone on the edge, watching the sun break through pink clouds and whispered to no one, I earned this. It wasn't just the hike. It was the silence. The autonomy. The right to be my own person within a family that had always demanded I be someone else. That afternoon, I returned to the rented house where everyone else was staying. They had invited me to a beach bonfire. And for the first time in a long while, I said yes, not because I felt obligated but because I wanted to be there. Melissa was already at the fire pit, sitting in a beach chair with a blanket around her shoulders. Josh and the boys were digging a shallow trench in the sand, trying to build a canal that led all the way to the water. As I sat beside her, she didn't look over. Instead, she said quietly, "I read more of the Reddit comments. That caught me off guard." I turned but said nothing. Let her speak. "Some of them really tore into me," she added. "At first I wanted to write them all back. Defend myself. Explain how tired I've been, how overwhelmed. But then I read one that stopped me. I waited. It said, 'Being overwhelmed doesn't give you the right to offload your pain onto someone who never agreed to carry it.'" Melissa's voice cracked. "I realized I've been doing that to you for years." She turned to face me. "I don't know how to undo all of it. But I'm trying. I'm listening now. Not just to you. To Josh. To the kids. Even to myself." I searched her eyes, looking for a hint of performance, of martyrdom. But I didn't see it. What I saw was something I'd never seen in my sister before. Vulnerability without the need to dominate the room. "I'm glad," I said softly. That night I stayed by the fire longer than I thought I would. We roasted marshmallows. Ava helped the kids make tiny sand lanterns. Dad told a corny joke that made Mom laugh so hard she cried. Melissa sat quietly beside me, not once asking for help, not once pushing her needs into mine. When I returned to my hotel room just after 10 p.m., I found a note slipped under my door. In Melissa's handwriting. "Thank you for giving me a second chance, even before I earned it." I didn't reply. Because some words don't need answers. They just need time. The next morning my routine felt sacred. Quiet coffee. A morning walk by the dunes. A slow breakfast alone. And then, something unexpected. A message from Emily. She worked at the little bookshop I visited every other weekend back home. Quiet, thoughtful, always with a new recommendation whenever I wandered in. We'd never spoken beyond the checkout counter, but her smile always lingered in my memory longer than I admitted to myself. Her message was simple. "Hi Julia. I don't know if it's coincidence or fate, but I read that Reddit post. I knew it was you." My heart stopped. Not from fear, but from recognition. I replied quickly, nervously, "You did." She answered almost immediately. It was powerful. And true. A lot of us have been Julia. We just didn't know how to say it. She asked if I wanted to grab coffee when I got back to the city. Not a date. Not a big declaration. Just a quiet offering. A branch extended from someone who had seen my truth and didn't flinch. I said yes. For the rest of the day I floated. There was still friction in the family, still small silences that hadn't found words yet. But I didn't need everything to be perfect. I just needed space to be whole. Later that night, Josh approached me by the deck after dinner. "She's changing," he said, nodding toward Melissa, who was helping the boys into their pajamas. "Slowly. But meaningfully." "I see it," I said. "She paints now," he added with a soft laugh. "Watercolors. Messy. But I think it helps." "She never used to have hobbies." "She never used to have time," Josh replied. "Now she's learning to make space. Just like you did." And that was it. That was the line that broke me wide open. Because for years I had made space for everyone else. But now, I was learning to keep some of it for myself. Returning from the trip felt like stepping into a different version of my own life. My apartment, once a space I rushed into after chaotic weekends with the family, now felt like sanctuary, not escape. My desk by the window, my kitchen that smelled like vanilla candles and coffee beans, the soft cotton sheets I'd chosen myself, it all reminded me, this life is mine. A few days after I got back, I was organizing samples for a client meeting when an email landed in my inbox. The subject line read, "Update on Melissa." It was from Josh. I paused before clicking. My heart thudded, not out of fear but anticipation. Like I was bracing for something. I wasn't sure what. I took Melissa to her first therapy session this morning. She didn't resist. She didn't make excuses. She just listened. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Then came the line that froze me. Her therapist told her, "Being a mother doesn't mean losing your personhood, but it also doesn't give you the right to make others carry your unmet needs." According to Josh, Melissa cried through half the session. And for once, not from exhaustion. From realization. "I'm sorry it took this long," Josh wrote. "But thank you. Because if you hadn't drawn the line, she never would have seen the borders she kept crossing." I didn't reply immediately. I sat there, staring at the words, letting them settle into every wounded space in me that had once questioned whether speaking up would make me the villain. It hadn't. It had made me free. 2 weeks later, Melissa texted me to meet for lunch. My instinct flared: protect, avoid, retreat. But something deeper whispered, go. Not for her. For you. We met at a small cafe near the park where she used to take the boys. When I arrived, she was already seated. No kids, no distractions. Just Melissa. On time. She stood to greet me. No grand gestures, no dramatic hugs. Just a quiet, hi. We ordered salads and iced tea. Talked about neutral things first. A new preschool the boys were trying out, a new paint color Melissa was experimenting with in the dining room. She didn't ask me to babysit. She didn't complain. She just sat. Present. After a few minutes, she took a deep breath. I've been to 4 sessions so far. I nodded. And every time, I leave feeling like someone peeled back a layer I didn't even know I was hiding under. I stayed silent, letting her continue. I used to think everything should revolve around me because growing up, I had to be the responsible one. I thought being the oldest meant being the center. When I became a mom, I panicked. I didn't ask for help. I demanded it. Especially from you. She looked down, twisting her napkin in her lap. I never stopped to ask if you were okay. I felt something shift inside me, not anger. Not resentment. Just grief. For all the years that had passed like that. I understand, I said. But understanding doesn't mean accepting. I know, she said quickly. And you shouldn't have. Then she gave a sad smile. Josh hired Ava full-time. She's amazing. She helps with school runs, even tutors the boys in reading. And I've started taking an art class every Tuesday morning. Just for me. I don't even bring my phone. I raised an eyebrow, amused. No phone. I know, right? She laughed. First day I thought I'd have a panic attack. But by week 2 it felt like breathing again. She paused, then added, I'm not asking you to forgive everything. But I hope one day you'll see that I'm trying to be someone new. Someone who doesn't weaponize motherhood. Someone who just wants to be your sister. I looked at her for a long time. And for the first time in a decade, I didn't see Melissa, the overbearing planner, the guilt gaslighter, the loudest voice in every room. I saw a woman unraveling the armor she had built for survival, and maybe finally learning how to live. From that day on, something truly began to shift. Not dramatically. Not in huge declarations. But in the small, everyday choices that define the future. Mom started calling me weekly, but always opened with, are you free? Not, can you help me with something? Dad started sending me texts about his gardening projects. Photos of the new bench he built, not requests that I come build it for him. And Melissa, she was learning. Sometimes her old habits tried to claw back. The subtle control, the deflection, but I saw her catch herself, rewind, apologize. More than once she said, you don't have to answer that if you're tired. And I didn't. Because now I knew how to say no. Without guilt. Without fear. One weekend, during a spontaneous visit to my parents' house, Melissa dropped by with the kids. Ava was with her. As the boys ran to the backyard, Melissa stayed on the porch and handed me something. A card. Inside, just one line, written in her unmistakably rounded handwriting. Thank you for not staying silent forever. I held that card for a long time. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I knew this wasn't the end. It wasn't a fairy tale resolution, but it was something better. It was a beginning. A month after I returned from the beach trip, life began to find a rhythm again, but this time, it danced to my beat. My interior design firm picked up a new project with a boutique hotel downtown, and for the first time I found myself leading a team. Not assisting. Not observing. Leading. The kind of opportunity that would have once scared me into silence now felt like exactly what I was made for. And strangely, my phone had gotten quieter. Fewer late-night texts from Mom. No unexpected, can you come by to watch the boys for a bit? Messages from Melissa. Even the family group chat stayed light, respectful, almost peaceful. It wasn't silence in a bad way, it was space. Then one early autumn afternoon, a message lit up my phone while I was sketching new shelving layouts in the studio. Instagram notification. Emily has sent you a message. It had been a few weeks since that gentle exchange after she read my Reddit post, the one she somehow knew was mine without ever being told. I hadn't seen her since, but something in that message had stayed with me. Not just her words, but the way she seemed to see through the chaos, straight to the root of it all. Hey Julia. That art exhibit you mentioned a while back, it's finally open. Want to go see it this weekend? I smiled. My thumb hovered over the reply for just a second before I typed. I'd love that. Saturday arrived with crisp air and golden leaves. We met outside the gallery, Emily in a cozy gray scarf holding 2 tickets, and that same calm presence she carried like second skin. The exhibit was breathtaking. Abstract pieces that twisted grief into shape, hope into color. There was one painting in particular, just a single canvas, smudged and chaotic, but with one thin golden thread running through it like a lifeline. I stood in front of it, unmoving. "That's you," Emily said softly. I turned. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "You've been through a storm. But you found a way to pull something beautiful out of it." We didn't speak for a while after that. We didn't need to. We wandered through the exhibit, then found a cafe nearby with dim lights and the smell of cinnamon laced in the air. We talked about everything and nothing: books, family, silence, survival. Not once did she interrupt. Not once did she try to fix me. When I mentioned my family, I didn't flinch. I spoke in full sentences now, not disclaimers. "I'm not angry at them anymore," I told her. "I just needed them to see me." "Do they now?" she asked, tilting her head. I thought for a moment. "Some days. Others they're still learning." She smiled. "That's all anyone can ask for." That's how my relationship with Emily began, not with drama or declarations but with shared space, mutual listening, and the rare kind of respect that doesn't ask for anything in return. Back in my family world, things continued to shift. Melissa sent me pictures one afternoon, not of the boys but of 3 watercolor paintings she had done in her class. One was of a woman standing on a cliff, arms outstretched toward the sea. "I think it's you," her caption read. Another weekend, Josh texted me a photo of the boys at the park. Just him and them. Saturdays are my time with them now. Melissa started going to a yoga group after therapy. I didn't reply with a heart emoji or an ah. I just wrote, "That's good. For all of you." Because we weren't pretending anymore. There were no, "as a family we just need to stick together" speeches. No forced holiday plans. No one tried to pretend the past didn't happen. And more importantly, no one expected me to erase my boundaries just because things were improving. In fact, my boundaries were being respected. Mom now called in advance with a gentle, "Only if you're free." Dad, surprisingly, had become the most vocal about what had changed. "You taught us something, Jules," he said one afternoon when we sat on the back porch sipping tea. "You showed us what happens when the quiet one finally speaks." I smiled. "It wasn't easy. I know. But it was necessary. For you. And for us." And then came the moment I didn't see coming. Melissa invited me over for dinner. No kids, no chaos. Just her, Josh, and me. She made roasted butternut squash soup, set the table herself, even had a bottle of wine chilled. During dessert, she brought out a small envelope and slid it across the table. "No guilt," she said. "Just something I should have given you years ago." Inside was a letter. Not a card. Not a text. A real, handwritten letter. It said, "I used to see you as the safety net. The one who never snapped. The one who didn't need help. But that wasn't fair. You needed space. You needed choice. And I took both from you. I can't erase that. But I can promise I won't ask again. Not until you offer. And even then I'll ask you twice if you really want to say yes." I folded the letter slowly, tears prickling at the edges of my eyes. "I appreciate that," I said. And I meant it. It didn't fix everything. It didn't undo years of imbalance. But it mattered. Later that night, Emily and I met up at my place. She sat on my backyard bench, leaned into my shoulder and said, "So, do you think your family gets it now?" I looked at the porch lights glowing softly around us, at the life I'd built brick by brick. "They don't have to understand everything," I replied, "as long as they respect it." And for the first time in my life I really believed that they did. Fall settled into Seattle with amber skies and crisp air that carried the smell of rain and warm pastries. My world was quiet, but not the kind of silence that comes from isolation. It was the silence of self-possession, of living life on my own terms for once. The boutique hotel project wrapped up with glowing feedback. I presented my final designs to the clients, and when they shook my hand I didn't shrink. I stood tall, confident, certain. I had become the kind of woman I used to envy, not because of wealth or fame but because she knew her worth. One rainy Wednesday evening while organizing my bookshelf, I found the handwritten card from Melissa again. "Thank you for not staying silent forever." I held it, my fingers tracing the ink. I didn't cry. I didn't sigh. I just honored it. The journey it represented. The weight it once carried. And the freedom it now meant. It It wasn't long after that when Mom invited me over for dinner. Not a family gathering. Just dinner. No agenda. She greeted me at the door with a warm hug and a simple, "Thanks for coming." Inside, everything was different. Not the furniture, not the smells of pot roast and cinnamon, but the energy. No one asked me to set the table. No one handed me a list of errands. Mom poured the wine, Dad turned on jazz music, and I sat, not as a helper, not as the fallback, but as a guest. Midway through dinner, Dad looked up from his plate and said, "We're planning a winter cabin weekend. Just a few nights in Leavenworth." I waited for the follow-up, the assumption that I'd share a room with the kids again, or keep them occupied while others relaxed. But instead he added, "We've already booked you your own space. King bed, private bath. Same with Melissa. You can join group activities if you'd like, but no pressure." I blinked. "Really?" Mom smiled. "We mean it this time. We know the difference now." Pause. Then Dad said, "We're trying to be a family with you, not around you." That sentence meant everything. Later that night, back at my apartment, I curled up on the couch with Emily, a blanket draped across our laps and soft indie music humming in the background. She'd become part of my routine now, not in a way that consumed me but in a way that expanded me. No expectations. Just presence. "You ever think about posting another story?" she asked quietly, tracing circles on the rim of her mug. "Maybe," I said. "But I think the best story I've written lately is the one I'm living." She smiled and leaned her head on my shoulder. Weeks turned to months. Thanksgiving passed without drama. Melissa brought a hand-painted turkey centerpiece she made in class, and her boys handed out little cards they'd written themselves, one of them even saying, "Thank you Aunt Julia for resting this year and being happy." I nearly broke down reading it. And in December the cabin trip came and went, just like they promised. No babysitting. No guilt. Melissa and I even went snowshoeing together. She didn't ask me to carry her load. She carried her own. At one point we sat beside the fire, cocoa in hand, and she looked at me. "You know, I used to think you were selfish." I raised an eyebrow. "I know," she continued. "But now I realize, you weren't selfish. You were just tired of being sacrificed." I didn't respond. Because that was all I'd ever needed her to understand. When spring arrived, my parents began asking different kinds of questions. Instead of, "Can you watch the boys this weekend?" they asked, "Are you working on anything exciting?" Instead of, "Will you come help us with this project?" they asked, "Would you like to join us for lunch?" The transformation wasn't dramatic, but it was sustained. That's the thing about change, it doesn't always come as thunder. Sometimes, it arrives as the quiet miracle of being asked instead of expected. Of being seen instead of used. Melissa continued therapy. Josh kept the boys busy on the weekends. Ava became a permanent fixture in their home, and from what Melissa told me, also something of a family friend. More than once she admitted, "Ava taught me how to ask for help. You taught me why I needed to." As for Emily and me, our story blossomed slowly, beautifully. We went from cafe dates to weekend hikes to quiet nights reading the same book in different rooms. She never tried to fix me. She never made me explain. She just said, "I'm here." One Sunday afternoon, sitting on my porch under the first warm breeze of April, Emily asked, "Would you ever go back to how it was?" I shook my head. "Not because I hate who I was," I said, "but because now I know what it feels like to be whole." I reached for her hand. And I'll never trade that for peacekeeping again. If there's one thing I hope you take from this story, it's this. Silence might keep the peace, but it'll never give you freedom. You can love your family and say no. You can care deeply and set boundaries. You can be quiet and powerful. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. Because in the end, the people who truly care about you won't punish you for growing, they'll grow with you.